Hi there, and welcome to the French Property Focus podcast. Thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. So, in today's episode, I'm going to talk about is 2025 a good time to buy a property in France? We're going to cover differences between the French and the US markets, why the show Flip or Flop just wouldn't work in France, 2025 outlook for some specific regions, and market trends for the rest of the year. But the first thing I'm going to talk about, because it's May and I'm in the countryside, is fields of poppies everywhere. They're just carpeting fields red. You drive around, they're everywhere. You walk around, they're everywhere. It's incredible. If you've ever been to France in May, you'll have experienced it. If you haven't, come and check it out. It's incredible. I don't know if you've ever tried growing poppies. My wife and I have, and it's been an unmitigated disaster every time. They taunt us every year because you see them growing in cracks in the concrete, you see them growing all over piles of rubble, and yet in our garden, absolutely nothing at all. Anyway, enough about poppies, let's talk about the French property market. So, what's the difference between the French and the US property market? Well, let's start at the basics. They're just totally different beasts, totally different. It's much more measured, the market in France, and less volatile than the US. So in the US, you might see hotspots where there's a plus or minus 10% fluctuation in a year, maybe sometimes even more. That would be extremely rare in France. You just don't see it. And there are some real key reasons for this stability and the difference in the market. So, first off, let's get on to flip or flop. There's a much lower speculation culture in France. That's fundamentally why flip or flop in France just would not work. For a start, the renovation costs are much higher, and there's a couple of key reasons for that too. So most good builders, they will pay for insurance that covers their work, structural work, for 10 years. So you get a 10-year guarantee. It costs more money to do that. And also, if you DIY it yourself and then sell the property, you might end up, without realizing it, you will have to give a 10-year guarantee yourself on that work as part of the signing. It will just be in the contract, the notaire. That's how it works in France. So that's not very attractive to lots of people. Also, for the builders that are doing the work in France, the social charges on the profit they make are very high. They are for everyone in France. So it means that they have to charge like more than you might expect for some of the jobs. The tax system, it favours long-term ownership. So if you're subject to capital gains in France, and which you would pay on if it's a second home, so like in flip or flop, they're not living in those derelict places that they're doing up. They have their own home, and that's a second home. So if you do that in France, there's definitely a capital gain on it. The level's quite high, but the system is set up so that that capital gain decreases over a period of ownership. So after 18 years, that's the maximum it decreases by. So that tax system means that it doesn't really work to try and flip houses that you're not living in. Also, culturally, it's very different in France. French homeowners typically hold properties for an average of 15 to 20 years. That stat for the US is more like 8 to 10 years. So again, that's creating more stability in the market. Things go on the market less often. There are much stricter mortgage requirements in France. The banks don't lend as easily in France. And that's again down to government regulation and the amount of debt that they're allowed to have on their balance sheets. And it leads to higher down payments and stricter debt to income ratios when they're looking at lending to individuals for mortgages. And again, that's all leading towards this culture where there's more stability in the housing market. There isn't a cyclical kind of debt bubble building up that crashes, and so you don't get that up and down movement quite so much. As we're talking about mortgages, just to dispel a common myth, Americans can get mortgages from French banks. Not all Americans, and it might not be very easy, but it is possible, and people do it. The process is longer, you'll need more documentation than you might in the US, but it is possible. So there's a quick overview of the differences in the French and American property markets. If you've just started and you're finding that searching for a property in France is really different as well, then come and check us out at frenchpropertyfocus.com. There's a free resources hub on there, and there'll be something there to get you started to help you out. There's even a form you can fill out if you're really stuck. You can fill out a form telling us a little bit about your search and what you are really struggling with, and we'll write back. It's not AI generated or auto generated. A real person will write back to you with some helpful tips on what you could do to turn around your search. So the current market status. Well, let's go back a little bit. 2021 to 2023, there was a big price bubble. I've just said that you don't get price bubbles in France, but there was the global pandemic. Um, the lockdown in France was super strict. People who were stuck in apartments in Paris, maybe no outside space, they all wanted out. And lots of people came to the countryside either to move because they had jobs that they could move, or they bought second homes in the countryside. So it led to, like, for France, quite a big spike in prices, and they've been falling since 2023. The information that you get in France on property transactions is much more limited than the US, and it takes a lot longer to become publicly available. The only people who have the up-to-date information are the notaires. They have to be involved in every transaction in France, so they have all of the data, and they will release reports with their opinions on that every quarter. So the last one that I read was from March this year, and it related to data from the final quarter of 2024, and the phrase they used was cautiously optimistic. So they were saying that the price decreases might have hit bottom. And for the rest of the year, let's keep a watch, but it might lead to the market ceasing to drop anymore. We might have reached the bottom, and maybe it will stay the same now or slightly increase again. So, what are we seeing in anecdotal trends? Well, at the moment, we are seeing lots of French buyers make offers with mortgages. It seems that the French banks have opened up lending, and we're seeing lots of offers on properties that have been on market for quite a while. And people are getting really good deals, actually. There have been price drops and offers being accepted well under asking price. There's much more of a culture of making offers below asking price in France than maybe the US. You don't get that same competition to go above asking or anything like that. It's a totally different market. But for example, I've seen properties that were listed for over 2 million that have been on market for more than 2 years drop down to 1.8. And at the other end of the market, I've also seen properties that have been listed for a couple of years that were listed around 150,000 have taken offers below 100,000. So quite a big reduction in that, for example, over a third. And you won't get that on every property that's out there, but you'll have a better chance of finding a good deal if you find out how long the property's been on the market. And if it has been on the market for a while, there's a good chance that you might be able to get more off than you probably realise. So what about the regional outlook for this year? Well, like I said, some of the data is difficult to get hold of, but from what we've seen, the more buyers markets are places like Paris. The prices have continued down there, and the days that properties spend on market have been increasing. So that's a sign that it's more of a buyer's market. And a similar story for the French Riviera. Although there is still strong demand there, properties have been staying on the market longer and longer. Provence, relatively stable still. There's always a demand there. It's a beautiful place to live. And the ones which we see constant demand for and prices are maybe increasing again is around Bordeaux, always a strong demand, and the Dordogne. And both those areas have really large English-speaking communities too, not just Americans, but other nationalities that are English-speaking. So what about the US buyer trends? What are we seeing? There's a lot going on in the world at the moment. There's a lot going on in the US at the moment. And you might think that that means that people are cancelling their trips or there's less US people looking. It's not what we're seeing. We're seeing increasing demand, if anything, from US buyers looking to buy properties in France, and I think also in other European countries. Now, that won't all be for a move, but lots of people buy for like potentially holiday home and then retirement. So we're seeing lots of people looking still. If you're looking as an American at France and wondering if you're on your own, you're definitely not. There's an increasing demand from people. So one of the other things, because the currency at the moment has been flipping, you might have think there's less. You're going to get less euro for your dollar than you would have done maybe a year ago, um, and that's certainly true. But France is still excellent value compared to parts of the US. You'll still get a lot for your money in France, particularly outside of the big cities. One warning I would make on the currency shifts, though, closing will take longer than you expect in France. So from when you make your offer, you might not close for 3 or 4 months, even if you're a cash buyer. So what that means is you don't need any cash when you make the offer. It might be 6 weeks till you have to pay the deposit, and then you'll be 3 months after that, maybe till closing. So you need to make sure that you're protected from any currency movements in that time. Have seen a couple of deals this year where there has been a currency fluctuation. It moved more than the buyers expected and had to pull out and lose their deposits. So there are currency experts out there. I'm not one of them. Go and speak to a currency expert and see what solutions they can offer you, like a forward contract or something like that. If you don't know anybody, send us an email. I can send you some recommendations of people to try. What I would always say, though, with France, it's not ideal for a short-term investment. If you are looking at buying in France for a short-term investment, don't do it. Find a nice gîte, find a nice hotel, have a great holiday. You don't need to buy a property for a short-term 1 or 2 year investment to have a holiday in France. It's not ideal for that. We already talked about the flip or flop. It's not ideal for that. People who invest in property in France generally are looking at it as a longer-term investment. Either, like I say, for a holiday home that they end up maybe retiring to or having the option to, or they move because they're already retiring, or they just want to have a holiday home for the next like 15, 20 years. People who buy property in France buy it because of the culture, the food, the wine, the outdoor markets, summer festivals, just living that French life that you see in films and TV shows. That's what people are buying, and it tends to be a longer term investment. So, although there's short term impacts out there right now, that doesn't seem to be deterring those people who are in it for the long term investment. So, is it a good time to buy in 2025? Well, it could be. There's lots of value out there right now because of this end of the kind of COVID price bubble. People are being more realistic about prices, being more realistic about accepting offers, and there's still interest. So you could wait and see if it, drops even further. But the smart move, probably, as far as I'm concerned, is we're at that inflection point now, and if you get in now, you might catch yourself a really good deal. Um, Best value are ones that have been on the market for a while. There are ways of finding out how long things have been online. There are some hints and tips. If you visit FrenchPropertyFocus.com, again, I'm saying there's a free resources hub there. There's lots of free advice. Also, we have a signature program coming up soon, which you can sign up for now. It will give you a complete guide to the whole process of buying and searching for a property in France, from the first search right up until closing and what you do after closing. You can sign up now on FrenchPropertyFocus.com to be told when that comes out. Thank you for listening to everything today, and I really hope to see you on the next podcast.